This is a common question that Muslims ask all the time. Can Muslims take a mortgage to buy a house?
Yeah, it's not an easy question to answer because there's a lot of traditional ruling that we have to deconstruct in order to arrive at a fair and reasonable answer that is practical for our modern times. But it's a necessary question to address because I've met many Muslims who have been very devout in so many respects and they have lived for many years with a house that they have bought on a mortgage, and they feel a lot of guilt and they feel that something is like inadequate about them and their level of Islamicity. There are, of course, many Muslims who say, well, we're going to forget this rule and just go and do whatever
yes, many
we have
Muslims
to do.
do that, yeah.
Yes, and that, of course, is not a good attitude because it means that basically we're throwing away what we know to be the religious ruling. We're just doing whatever we want, and the psychology of being a Muslim there is, I don't know what's worse, living with the guilt or
doing it and knowing that it's or thinking that it's wrong.
Thinking that it's wrong, but just giving up on it.
And then there are some people who just rent, they rent for their whole lives.
Exactly. And then there could be some non-Muslims who might be looking at this and becoming aware already that Muslims have this dilemma, and they might be thinking to, man, if I am to ever become a Muslim, what will I have to do with my house? So we have to clear the air on this. Now, there is a council of Muslim scholars that is known as the European Fatwa Council, only because they meet in Europe to study the problems of Muslim minorities in Europe and by extension in America and Canada and elsewhere, Australia and so on. But they're made up of scholars. The council is made up of scholars from all around the world, including the Arab countries, major scholars such as Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi. And this body had ruled, and the fatwa can easily be found online, that if you're going to buy the house that you're going to live in, then you can use a conventional mortgage from the bank, even though that will involve you paying interest, if there are no viable alternatives. And of course, they go through a lot of fine print about what's meant by not having a reasonable alternative and so on. If you read the fine print too much, you may get the impression that you're back where you started, that it's not going to happen. But if we take this in a reasonable way and analyze their arguments, why was it even possible for them to say that you could actually buy this house using the conventional mortgage? It's because they differentiate between the giving and taking of interest. Giving interest, they say, is, and it makes you an accessory to somebody taking it, and taking it is the thing that is absolutely haram or forbidden or prohibited in Islam. And I support that view because when we look at the Quranic verses, it's very clear that the Quran, whenever it condemns interest, it's always condemning the person who's taking the interest, or in the Quranic language, eating the interest. So, for example, الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ الرِّبَا in the second chapter of the Quran. وَأَخْذِهِمُ الرِّبَا وَقَدْ نُهُوا عَنْهُ, and their taking of interest when it was prohibited for them. وَأَقْلِهِمْ الرِّبَا, their eating of interest and so on. وَأَقْلِهِمْ أَمْوَالَ النَّاسِ بِالْبَاطِلِ, their eating of the wealth of other people by improper means and so on. So it's always the taking and the eating of the interest, meaning eating here meaning that you get the money and you buy your food and you eat. So you're eating from the hard labor of other people who have had to borrow money for their needs and then work to pay it back off, plus the interest on top of that. It would seem then that when the Quran says that if you do not stop this, then be aware of a war from God and His Messenger, that would mean that the Quran is coming in the defense of people who are oppressed in society, oppressed especially in ancient times when the interest system could actually make a person could oppress a person. Sometimes people were so overburdened by usurious debts and usurious interest that they would have to eventually become a slave to the creditor because they had no means of paying off the debt. So God then is coming in on the side of the oppressed and defending them against the oppressors.
That's a great answer. Thank you for your time, Dr.
You're
Shabir.
welcome.